Hi, I'm Ross O'Brien with the Economist Corporate Network in Hong Kong. We've just wrapped up the West and the Rest, China's retail markets. I'm here with our panelists, Tim Collins of Li & Feng Asia, Michael O'Donnell from Speedo, and we've been talking about what happens when retailers and brand owners move from established Tier 1 and Tier 2 markets into the 43 cities that constitute Tier 3 Chinese markets and the 192 Tier 4 markets out there, where average incomes perhaps might be half of what they are in Tier 1 today, but in 3 or 4 years' time, who knows, we reckon they may be as wealthy as many of those in the upper tiers. So, Tim, when you work with clients to expand, if you like, off the grid, what are some of the major considerations, or what are some of the major drivers that are motivating your clients to expand rapidly outside of established markets in China?
Yeah, great question, Ross. I think the key considerations when you're pushing out into China with any of the brands or businesses we run with, clearly you've got resource constraints like any business will have, and number one for us is still people and skills, and making sure that we can attract and maintain the senior talent, the middle level talent, and then of course the grassroots, which tends to be the higher turnover areas still. So for us it's people number one. I think number two then clearly is just about working capital and your ability to manage the financial parameters that your business model requires, and your clients in some respects also require as their businesses inflate and grow in these markets.
Right. Now, Michael, how different for you is the next tier, or the next wave of Chinese urban markets? Does that cause you at Speedo to change your China strategy, or is it simply an expansion of what you've been achieving so far?
To some extent, it's an expansion of what we've been achieving so far. Our model is one of really working with distribution partners to establish concept retail effectively, whether that be shop-in-shop or a standalone shop. Because in China it's very important that we inspire people to participate in the activity of swimming. We're very focused on swimming. And so in order to do that, we have needed to work with our partners in China over the last 10 years to establish a way of presenting a brand, a swimming brand, to consumers in predominantly the Tier 1 clusters. And so now, as we consider geographical expansion, we have to think about how do we execute that with a distribution partner in the next cluster and the next cluster and the next cluster.
Right.
So similar to Tim, considerations around people, training, development, making sure that we're executing retail to global standards. And also we have to start with data before we even decide which clusters to go to. Right. We have to look at some of the macroeconomic data that the Economist Intelligent Unit provides us, which is always very helpful as a starting point, and then also to consider swimming pools,
right.
Investment in infrastructure, in increasingly urbanising cities in China. So these are the things we look at to make the decision on where to go.
Well, I'm sorry that the EIU data doesn't exactly count the number of swimming pools in each province, but hopefully we'll get to that point. You had mentioned something, not in the meeting, but in our earlier conversation, which I found quite interesting, that China, whether it's Tier 1 or Tier 4 markets for you, the way you present and the way you develop platforms for Speedo in China serves as almost an R&D lab for your expansion into other Asian markets.
Yes, yeah. So, China has a gravity to it. The scale of the opportunity is such that it turns all eyes within the organisation, the Speedo organisation, towards how do we create success in China.
Right.
And the route to the consumer is in some respects similar, but in some respects very different to markets like North America, Europe, Australia, where we operate more in shop-in-shop type environments, as opposed to sporting goods wholesale distribution.
Yep.
Neither is exclusive in any country, but the weight of shop-in-shop environments is greater in China.
Right.
And so that encourages us to learn a new way of doing things and to become better at being a retailing organisation.
Right. Right.
The benefits of focusing money and time, becoming good at being a retailing organisation, is having multiplying effects in other markets around the world where those skills are equally as applicable.
Got it. Now, Tim, just sort of throwing the big crystal ball question to you to wrap us up. You had finished up in the meeting just now with a fairly optimistic view of the long-term prospect, and particularly not necessarily specific to tiers, but in terms of China's will to create yet another economic transformation and turn itself into this consuming economy. And you ended up with a fairly upbeat note for retailers.
Yeah, and I think, if you ignore the short-term media infatuation, if you like, with a slowdown from 10 to 7 or something like this.
Right.
And we tend to get a little bit nervous about these things, right?
Yeah.
So here's the second biggest economy in the world growing only at 7%.
Yeah.
But if you set that aside, I think what we were very focused on in trying to communicate with the audience this morning, and again supported by your data as well, I think, is that China is very good at telling the markets actually what it's going to do. And I think that's quite a unique scenario when you think of how you might plan other markets, even within Asia.
Yeah.
Having that certainty over a 5-year planning cycle, which the government does adhere to, and we spend a lot of time understanding how those probabilities actually were realised.
Yeah.
And that there's not a significant deviation. So I think from a business planning perspective, China does give you a lot of confidence in that regard, and if they say they're going to do something, the probability and the track record already tells you that it's highly likely that we'll see that through. So we're very encouraged by that. I think it does give you that confidence to build 5- and 10-year horizons into your business,
Right.
and expect to be able to realise those sorts of ambitions, if you like.
Excellent. Tim, Michael, thank you very much for your time. Again, I'm Ross O'Brien with the Economist Corporate Network in Hong Kong. You've been watching the wrap-up of the West and the Rest, China's next wave of retail markets. Thanks for watching.